Hi, I'm Dr. Eric Westman, and this is the Keto Made Simple podcast.
Hi, everyone. Dr. Eric Westman here, and welcome back to my podcast where I review and debunk nutritional misinformation online. Occasionally, though, I like to do interviews and talk to people who I view as the movers and shakers in the low carb, keto, LCHF. What do we call it today, Doug? Today, I have Doug Reynolds with me, who has been, well, he'll tell his story, but a leader and a co-worker and with me in Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners. But the story starts way before with a conference he and his wife started putting on. And I really wanted to bring you on, Doug, to a couple things. The grassroots effort of people's hard work when this all began. Of course, now there are keto products on the shelf, but I'd like to introduce you to my group of followers and then YouTube generally. Thanks for being with me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Eric. Thanks for having me.
So where would you start? Who are you? How did we come to work together? I think it's a great story.
Yeah, I told this story so many times, and Pam keeps telling me like, "Hey, you tell this. It's the same. You say the same thing every time." And as well, that's the story, you know. But so for those people who haven't heard it, and this is normally where I start, like when I'm doing my opening talks at the events and stuff like that. I kind of start from back in the day, 2015 or thereabouts. I was about 51, 52, and I had been a long distance runner. And over those last 10 years, I'd started to really feel like I was taking strain, like I was putting on a little bit of weight each year that I thought I was just being lazy and not running anymore, not running enough to keep it off. And but my knees were getting sore, and I was having respiratory issues, and there was all sorts of things sort of going on. And I got an email, somebody trying to sell me exogenous ketones, actually, funnily enough. And but the heading of, or the subject of the email was ketones, an alternative or a better source of fuel than glucose. And being a runner and fully aware of the fact that I should be eating carbs and sugar and that all day to keep all my energy up and carb load and all of that sort of thing, I mean, it intrigued me. But it was exactly at that time that I had just stood on the scale and seen that I was about 35 pounds over what I considered my normal fighting weight, and that weight that had crept on over the last few years. And so it just came at the right time, and I started investigating this. I didn't even know what a ketone was. Honestly, I don't know how that's possible, but I didn't.
So you came from this through a non-medical background.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, electrical software engineer, basically. So
Fits in running, and what's fascinating to see is that there is a group who came to this way of eating not by reversal of diabetes. I mean, so you had some weight to lose, but you were running and healthy, and kind of typifies the another group of people who find this way of eating to be helpful. But everyone gets older. You just run less fast, and you were probably just having a midlife passage, right? Midlife crisis, right?
Yeah, but you see, I think what it was that I was also consuming sugar and carbohydrates.
Oh no, it couldn't be that.
By the time, in retrospect, that's what I found out, right? So I basically, this company was brand new. They actually had run out of product, so I couldn't even buy any if I wanted to. But I spent about 3 weeks, like, just diving down this rabbit hole, and it kind of explained everything. It explained what I was going through at the time. It even explained back in the day, in my early 30s, when I was running the Comrades Marathon, which is like 55 miles, that I just got to this. I was really, really fit. And I would go through Tim Noakes's carbo loading regimen like 3 or 4 days before and literally be standing on the start line feeling absolutely shocking, and feeling like I don't even think I can get to the next corner, let alone 55 miles up this mountain. And I always used to attribute it to nerves, because I had all my eggs in one basket, like all my training. I've run way over 100 marathons in total, but most of them have been training runs for this ultra marathon each time, right? And so I wasn't ever training for and racing these marathons. I was just running comfortably and training. So it was once a year that I got to run this big race, and I thought it was just nerves, that I was just
Well, everyone was
beating
doing
myself up,
and just to clarify, to introduce Dr. or Professor Tim Noakes wrote the book on how to run a marathon, right? The lore of running. And he taught everyone to carb load, right? So you would tank up your glycogen in your muscles and in your body. And I didn't realize that it made you feel bad. Or, but the mindset is that you need to run on sugar all this time. Let's make sure you have plenty of it, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I was standing there like feeling really bad, and in the end, I would muscle through it, and I was really fit, and so I ended up running relatively well. I mean, I wasn't an elite athlete, I wasn't competitive, but I
Let me
finished.
just tell you, most of my patients never even dream about running a marathon.
Yeah.
A 5K would be a life goal. So, I mean, I just wanted to emphasize that this is an approach that can help many different types
Correct.
of lifestyles. And, but so then what made you think that maybe there was another way?
Well, it was really the research. When I got this email, I started, and at the time, I think Low Carb Down Under had done one event, the event that the Noakes people did in Cape Town had happened, and so I learned a lot of what I learned about low carb and keto from watching the videos of those two events, and so
that was a remarkable meeting. The Prof Noakes
the one in Cape
brought
Town,
all the experts, world experts, to Cape Town for a meeting, and that's a whole nother sidebar. But I'm glad that you always wonder. I was at that meeting. I was asked to speak, and you can still find it on YouTube.
Excuse me, some of you.
The list of foods that I use in my clinic, actually, and but to hear the people from all around the world, the Low Carb Down Under, Australia, the South African group, and well, I wonder if, because of your South African upbringing, if that made particular credibility because of Prof Noakes.
So
Or running in general.
when I was watching the videos, not so much, right? I'm trying to think, I'm wondering whether I'm lying a little bit in the fact that maybe it was more the Low Carb Down Under videos that I listened to beforehand. Because the story really goes is that when I eventually, after all of this research, I decided, okay, this explains all the issues that I'm having. Like, I need to try this. And I'm an engineer, I looked at it from an engineering point of view. And it when you analyze the physiology and the biochemistry and everything, it made sense. And so I decided I was going to do it. But it was kind of surreptitiously under the radar sort of thing. You don't want to be telling anybody that you were doing it, And I was about 3 or 4 months into it, and I was now really starting to see improvements and stuff. And my mom and dad still lived in South Africa at the time, and I used to call them every Sunday. It was like a thing. And after about 3 or 4 months of doing this, I finally fessed up to them while I was on this call on a Sunday morning, that this is what we were doing, And she said to me, "That sounds like the Tim Noakes diet." Because he had been talking, they called it banting there in South Africa, and it was a huge thing. And I think I had been, it was like he was my hero, right? And the law of running was like my Bible. And so I was literally, while we were on the call, I got a laptop and I was like looking it up on Banting and Tim Noakes online. And that was when I first found out that he had found this and had an amazing turnaround of his type 2 diabetes and everything. And so that just, at that point, that led massive credibility to what I was doing it, because it kind of made sense to me. But when Tim bought it, when I had heard that Tim bought into it, it was like, okay, this is real stuff, you know.
And
So
you had the personal experience to back that up, right? So you're reading and you're doing, or you read and then you did it. And so it's like, there are a lot of things in life we just take on faith that one day it'll help us, right?
right,
Yeah, no, the thing is, still, and 20 years from now, you'll have benefit.
no, but that's the thing that's so amazing, that I when I do try to talk to people about it, you know, I've got past trying to convince everybody about it. They've got to be in the right place, like I was, you know. But when I do talk to people, I want them to realize that it's you just need. I tell them to try it for a week or 2 weeks. Like, the changes are so far, and you know from your practice that, you know, the changes happen so fast that if you've got patients that are on medications and stuff like that, like, you have to watch really carefully from the beginning, and look at adjusting those, like, almost right away sometimes, or often, because the changes are so fast. And so I started to notice things like almost immediately, you know. I was doing these double martial arts training sessions like twice a week, and literally coming home at night and being dead, and getting up in the morning and feeling like literally like I had to crawl to get to the restroom, to the toilet, you know. And once I started doing this, I was within a very short time, I was bouncing out of bed and going for a run in the morning. The that was just phenomenal to me. And then the recovery time that I found to be so much more improved, like how quickly, and, you know, so now I'm getting older now. I'm like in my 50s now, right? Early 50s at that stage. And I should be slowing down and whatever. And I was running and recovering from that run like so much faster than I had been before. And my sore knees cleared up. You know, I had skin issues on my ears that cleared up, my respiratory issues. Like, I was battling to breathe at night, and my sinuses were always blocked up, and I was like literally breathing through my mouth all the time, which was horrible when you wake up in the morning. That all cleared up. You know, I go to bed at night and I'm breathing through my nose, and that's like go through the night. Those are things I wasn't expecting when I started trying this diet, you know.
And if you tell everyone everything that gets better, they won't believe you, and they'll think you're a shill and
Well, yeah, you're making it up.
Well, you have to be careful to not say that, although it's quite motivating, and just to explain, and then how fast some of that can happen.
Yeah, and it is if the people are in the right space and they are open to hearing that at the time, and that's over the 10 years what I've kind of learned is to not try and preach it all the time. You know, if people want to know, I'll talk to them about it.
Yeah,
but I rather talk to the people that come to your channel and our channel and our events, and the people that are open to this. Then I can talk to them.
Well, but an initial urge to just tell everyone is common, because you're feeling so great.
Yeah.
You want to let everyone else know, but then, you know, unsolicited advice is rarely welcome. Is something I balance, but a lot of people wonder how to handle their family, friends, that's it's really neat that your family already knew about it, because Prof Noakes was changing South Africa. For a minute, there were Banting restaurants, I remember.
Yeah, I think the last time I went to Cape Town, I know there's this very famous restaurant on the top of Constantia Neck. It's like on top of this mountain. It's actually on the Two Oceans Marathon route. And, like there were Banting options on the menu. It was like, it was a pleasure to be able to see that the community and the population had embraced this, because Tim is such an icon, I suppose, in that country. It's amazing.
So I guess I've never really gotten this level of detail. What possessed you to start the meetings? Because I mean, just for
so that was it. I'd watched some of those ones at the Low Carb Down Under meeting, and
that was Australia.
That's Australia, correct. And then the one in Cape Town. And then there were a couple at the time. I think the Metabolic Health Summit had just started. I think they'd had one little one in Florida. And then Jeff Gerber's Low Carb Down Under. Not Down Under, Low Carb Denver.
Yeah.
I think he had one as well. And so, but also with 150 people that were there. And I was sitting with
I'm sorry, it started up in the mountains.
In the mountains, correct, up in Vail.
Breckenridge, then Denver, yeah.
Vail, then Breckenridge, or the other way around, yeah?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I was sitting, it was my birthday, and it was now 6 months later that my weight was back down to, that 35 pounds had come off. I was loving life again. I was running. I was just, things were good. And it was my birthday. All the company I was working for, all the employees had been at this restaurant. And again, first rule about Fight Club is don't talk about Fight Club. So we were long over talking about this whole thing in front of them. They were sick of hearing it. But once they all left, it was just myself and Pam there. And then we started talking about it. And I was saying, like, how is it that I didn't know about this? And there's like one or two little conferences around the country. We need to put 1,000 people in the room. That I literally was saying that, pounding my fist. And my thought, I literally woke up the next morning and started writing to people and trying to organize it. And it wasn't even like a conscious decision. I just kind of just started doing it. It's quite an amazing thing if you think about it. So I wrote to a couple of people that I had seen in these other videos that I'd watched that seemed, and you start to scour YouTube and that. And there weren't many videos back in those days. So you saw the real influencer type people that were putting stuff out. And so I contacted a couple of them. Steve Finney was one of them. Jeff Folick was one. And there's one other, Gary Taubes. And I literally looked them up on, I had never been to one of these low carb meetings. I was an engineer, a software engineer. I had experience putting on meetings, but not in this space. I didn't know anything. And I contacted these three people and said, like, hey, if I put on this conference in San Diego, so I thought San Diego, summer, tourist destination, we're going to put 1,000 people in the room. And, they got back to me. Steve was a bit hesitant and in the end didn't come that first time, but he's been to almost all our events since then. Jeff Folick was the wrong email. And so I didn't get a response, but I found out later down the road that was the wrong email. And I wrote to him and he ended up actually coming. But the big thing was Gary. I knew how much his time meant to him, and he agreed to speak to me on the phone. And I often tease him when I'm introducing him and calling him up to the stage at the meetings. It was like I'd asked to marry his daughter, and it was like this interrogation. But he talks to me. He spoke to me afterwards and said, like, I've been invited to places where no one's shown up, and they still paid my fee, but that's not good optics, and it's not good for either side. So I just wanted to make sure that you knew what you were doing. And by the end of this hour conversation, he said, okay, if you put this thing on in San Diego, I'll come and speak. And that was the moment. I mean, for people that are in this space, they know what an icon he is. And Pam was standing in the passage while I had that call and was on speaker. And we put the phone down, and I looked at her, and I said, like, wow, this thing is real. It's happening, And that was the moment. I mean, we literally, I hadn't even started to create. We had no website, we had no social media presence, we had literally nothing. And for whatever
That's how it starts, right? That's how things start. So, if people are thinking of doing that now, it starts with the thought and getting some speakers, and then, but you didn't have like a company to fund the events, right?
No, we had nothing.
So how did that happen? I mean, did you put up your own money? Like,
Well, look, yes. So
yeah.
I thought we would get 1,000 people easily. So that was my naivety. It was like, it's way harder than anybody can imagine.
Well, you might say that you're an optimist. I'm an optimist.
Yeah, I think if I'd known what I know now, I probably would never have done it.
Yeah, well,
and so
that's life sometimes.
Yeah, not knowing was actually a blessing at the time.
Right.
We ended up with massive battles and massive stress and stuff to get to a point where we actually put this event on. But it was it was stressful. And so what happened was that another thing was that we had no, I thought that we had a lot of experience putting on events, but I realized later that the CEO of the company that we worked for did all the negotiations and these contract negotiations and the payments and all of this kind of thing to the hotel. And I kind of wasn't even aware of that. I was just, my job was logistics, right? Like planning how the rooms set up and all of that sort of stuff, which I thought I knew what I was doing, but in retrospect, it's like Mickey Mouse stuff compared to the important things, right? And the contract that we have,
they're all important. They're just different levels of. I worked with the Obesity Medicine Association on their board, and then the president of the organization. It's 5,000 doctors now, and other MD, types, but they have a entire staff, 5 to 6 people working on it. All they do really is meetings and content. And so I have great respect for negotiations, and they plan years ahead. And
it's crazy.
It is a heavy lift. It really is, but especially the start. So do you remember what year was this then?
This was 2016.
Okay.
But the biggest thing was the deadlines that they had. So we had, like, from the time we signed the contract, like every month we owed them some money towards this overall cost. That so you sign a thing that says if you don't meet your room block minimums and your food and beverage minimums, then you owe that money to them. It's like you have to come up with the money.
It's a hard
and then this schedule of payments. And, I was getting, like, after the first one, I think we managed the first one. And then by the time we got to the second one, we hadn't collected enough money. And we were personally financially in a hole. And so, like, we just didn't pay, or we paid what we could, right? And that's I think I wrote a book about this whole story, which we can probably mention later. But
please show.
Here it is.
Cover. Yeah, the road to metabolic health.
Road to metabolic health. So I tell the story in there about literally about 3 weeks before the event. Like, we were way behind in payments by this stage, and the manager called us in, and he didn't even take us up to his office or into like a little meeting room or something like that. He literally, standing there in the lobby of the hotel, he started saying, like, you guys, you've signed this contract, and you haven't. We're gonna cancel this meeting. And Pam was in tears. I was virtually in tears as well, I think. And it was just like, we've sold tickets to people. There's people coming from all over the world, literally, and all around the country for sure. And then some people coming from other countries. They're almost about to get on a plane. All the money we've collected, we've given to you, and you're not going to give that back to us if you cancel this. So you can't. I literally was saying, you can't cancel this. And I don't know how I persuaded him. I just said, look, I don't know. I'll get a big loan. I'll do something. Go fund me. I'll do something. We'll get you your money, but you can't cancel this meeting. And he somehow eventually agreed to go forward with it.
I'm amazed it didn't take lawyer letters and threats of lawsuits and all. That happened.
Yeah, and it didn't get to it. Yeah, I mean, they hadn't. I don't think we had. I had communications from their sales staff and the hotel staff about and threats, but it hadn't got to like collection letters or something like that yet. But we were in the hotel having the meeting, knowing that we were many, many thousands of dollars short of what we were going to owe, the week after the meeting. And
this is pretty much when all of the ticket pre-sales have been done. It's not like you could bank on 100 people coming that last day, right?
No, and that was over the years. I think we've done like 24 events now, and it's weird. There's no pattern to it. It's like the one year we had like almost half our sales in the last 2.5 weeks before the event. And then so you kind of count on that the next time. And literally we didn't sell any tickets in the last 3 weeks, not in one.
Yeah.
To the same event the next year, for instance, and then that is so frustrating and scary because until the day of the event, you really don't know how much money you've collected, and that's been the stress that Pam and I have dealt with like through these years, that I felt like it was time to tell people what it had been like, how we.
Well, so what kept it going? Why? I'm thinking about this. You've probably heard more lectures than I. Be sitting in the room watching the content of all of the. So I might go in and spend a day or two, or actually I tried to be at the whole meetings every day. But so what kept you going? I mean, it's financially.
I don't know.
It wasn't financial.
No, and I think I think if I'm honest, when I first started considering this and I was saying let's put 1,000 people in the room, I was assuming we were going to put 1,000 people in the room. And based on that, doing the calculation was like, okay, we're actually going to come out ahead here, but things are much more expensive than people realize than I realized until that first one. There's, the prices that they quote, all say plus at the end of it. Like, like the food and beverage minimum was $60,000, but that's 60,000 plus. And plus means plus 25% service fee plus sales tax. And that effectively adds about another third onto it. So at the end of the day, the 60,000 becomes almost 90,000. And those were things that we didn't take into account. The other thing was the cost of the AV. It's a couple of screens and a couple of projectors and a few mics. How
expensive
hard can it be, right? And this doesn't even include recording, right? This is just to display the slides and stuff. $60,000 plus. Right.
If someone's in the hotel business watching, I mean, I'm sure they're just going to say, well, that's, it's expensive to do this. Right. But at the time I knew how difficult it was to do meetings, having been to them, and actually how spoiled we get as doctors and health providers. We just go to meetings, they're set up, and what we don't really keep in mind is that the booths are pretty much all pharmaceutical companies who are spending, hundreds of thousands of dollars for these things and the events in the vendor area. And so to see you try this was just so awesome. But you're not normal. You're someone who did marathons and even might have liked the challenge of it and wouldn't step down. But so I just wondered if maybe, when did it become apparent that you were changing the world? I mean, now you get up at a meeting and you say, I know this meeting where we have been.
He's going to change the world.
Changes the world.
So I totally believe that. And I think that's the reason why I kept doing it. And I talk about this now. We in the hotel now. The meetings happened. We've just finished our first day. But in the back of my mind, I know that I'm still owed $40,000 or whatever to get out of this in one piece. And I have no idea where that money's coming from. But we had this like little vendor area outside the ballroom, like in the lobby area outside. And so everybody left after the last lecture. And we had dry farm wines there. We're doing the wine tasting. And I finished packing all my stuff up, sitting at my desk at the back of the room there, and walked out through the doors into this lobby area, and it was just humming. And it was a moment, I think, that I'll never forget. And it was like, I looked at this and thought, shit, I did this. And there was so much excitement, and everybody was talking about all these things, all that they had seen through the day and stuff. And it was like, okay, all this stress and all of this drama was worth it. And I will find the money, but this was worth it.
Well,
and the next thing,
that kind of vibe, that vibe is still there at
it is every single meeting. I think that's
amplified.
It is, and I fail to describe it properly. And when people ask, like, why don't I just watch the live stream? I try to explain it, but I just never do a good job,
You don't have the hallway conversations. You don't get the spontaneous combustion that happens.
Yeah, it's just it's something that if you, and I understand people have financial issues, they have scheduling issues, they have children. There's all sorts of reasons why they literally cannot be there. And the live stream is a decent option. You know, it's not just like watching the videos, because Pam's sitting at the back and you get everybody's on a group chat, and so everybody's chatting and commenting about the talks and stuff like that. So they get their own little vibe going there if they're watching it live. But yeah, if there's any way that people can find the money and find the time, carve out the time to come and be there, it's life changing for a lot of people. And and I have so many people that have told me that they were on the live stream for a few years, and then they came and they couldn't believe what a difference it made. So
of course, to those who aren't who don't know, this is called the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners meetings.
Right.
They're held in San Diego in the fall, and Boca Raton in the January in the winter. And the idea is to bring together not just doctors. I mean, actually, the majority of people are the general public, to come learn about low carb, keto, LCHF. It's all really kind of been a transition in the name, right? And yet the content is very similar. So I wonder, so the beginning of it is really does take amazing effort. And I guess we've talked through the years, sometimes the financial aspects were really bad, and yet you hung in there. So thank you
Yes.
so much, and Pam.
So I think the second one was the first one we did in Boca in the January, in not Boca, West Palm Beach was the first one that we did in Florida.
Yeah.
And that was a much smaller one, and the layout was different. And so the registration table was like right close to where there was, because I could see them and be part, or like watch them and supervise the setting up of the ballroom and everything. But I was sitting at the registration table, which I'd never wasn't in San Diego. And this lady came up, and she was talking to Pam and the other girl that was doing the registrations, and she started crying. She was a little overweight, and she was saying, like, I shouldn't be here. Like, I'm a coach. I'm supposed to be a health coach, but look at me. And I shouldn't be telling other people what to do, but like my husband and my friends are trying to do this, and I know it's been helping, but my family is like, and my doctor are sabotaging me. And Pam just said to her, look, you've paid, you're here, why don't you just stay and listen to these comments? There's so much information here that you can learn. It's just stay. And so she did. And to watch her grow through those 3 days of that event,
3 days, yeah,
was just astounding. Like, just like you're talking about, like in the lobby during wine tasting, at the dinners and that, like she's talking and animated and sort of came to us at the end and said, like, thank you for convincing me to stay, And that's when I realized that I didn't want to just put on a meeting, that there's an aspect here of support and community that is so important. And what I also realized further down the line was it's even more important for the practitioners and the doctors like you, that you have a place to come where you're not always being attacked, and where you can actually talk with people and patients that are open to the conversation at the very least. And so that's what we've been, from there, we've just been committed to trying to cultivate a culture and a community of people that support each other.
For a long time, I resisted the kind of, how should I say, words of being our tribe, Our culture, see, culture is very close to cult, right?
Right.
And someone said, well, what do you do, Doc? I said, well, it's not about me. In the office, I can say that. And yet, the Low Carb USA, SMHP meetings really did become, for me, a tribe, not a cult. It's culture is a better word, but yeah, to know that I could see the same people and they are growing, and then also fostering the people who are brand new, and then how surprised was I when I go to one of the meetings and there are 4 people with this very rare condition called McArdle's. It's a glycogen storage disease that medical world doesn't know what to do. They're trying to get genetic insertion into the genes of these people. It's just an arduous research project going on, and they fix themselves by changing the diet from running on sugar, which the doctor said you should, to running on fat. So they were going, they had to stop and pretend they were window shopping every 50 yards or so because they were exhausted. And now they're climbing mountains.
Yeah, and doing these hikes across the UK and stuff. Yeah.
So the transition of the grassroots experience to the medical world was, in this case, was writing some case series. So their reports were put in the medical literature, and then one of the people who just was kind of on fire about it, who had the disease, got a group in London together, the world experts on McArdle, to talk about research using low carb and keto. But she knew that there was going to be a reaction against using a high fat diet. And that's exactly what happened at that meeting. The world's experts said, well, what are you talking about? Well, these people are doing what was kind of like an Atkins diet. And they go, oh, no, we can't use that. That's bad. That's And then she asked me to come, Stacy, because I would give my 30-minute, no, actually, we've been using this for years. And here's the unfolding science about how what we thought wasn't true, and how you can use this. So the meeting has put together not only people for their own personal experiences, but people who are changing the medical world. Diabetes, yeah, we fix that. And, I'm not diminishing that at all. The orphan diseases that get better by changing the food, I think this is just the start. I think there are a lot of medical things that most doctors don't understand nutrition, and the meetings that you put on and kept going through the years has been a really unique place for the tribe to get together. The dinners, to me, are just as important for the networking as the lectures themselves.
I agree. Even more so, even sometimes,
Yeah. So anyway, thank you so much for doing that.
No, but then, Eric, I thank you as well, because you tell that story, but I mean, the fact that they got in the literature and that had a lot to do with you. I mean, they came to us, and one of the ladies lived like literally just up the street from us, and she came and we hung out with her in the build up to the thing, and she was so excited to be able to get this group of believers to come to this meeting, and we literally gave them 5 minutes on stage to be able to tell their story, right? And I'd struggled to fit it into the schedule, but you latched onto that, and you went to them and approached them and helped them to get this paper published.
Which is a whole nother, it's a different skill, the skill set.
Right. But you had that, and you were so affected by their story that you went to them and said, I would like to help you to do this. And that's the kind of thing that happens all the time, that's going on at these meetings. And I don't know most of the stuff that goes on because I can't know everything. But I know a lot of networking, and amazing things come out of those dinners and those wine tasting expo times at the end of
this. if you're watching this YouTube and you have had a condition that doctors have been unable to help, and through the years maybe even put on medicine for it, and you're better, let us know, or better yet, come to one of the meetings, and you may find other people who have that kind of benefit. I saw someone in my clinic, and I get to see people almost every day doing this, improving things. I think she reversed her own gluten problem without knowing it, and the doctors just kind of missed it because it's hard to diagnose. And God forbid you tell someone to just not eat bread and gluten. I mean, it's an easy thing to do, but not necessarily. Anyways, I think so. People are fixing their medical issues by changing the food because the doctors don't understand food, or they go toward drugs. And so in your book, what's the byline? So the road to metabolic health. Why nutrition? Just
yeah. Sorry, I should know this, right?
That's okay.
Yeah, why the answer lies in food, not pharmaceuticals.
Why the answer lies in food,
not pharmaceuticals.
Not pharmaceuticals. Why have you come to this conclusion?
Based on 10 years of research and personal experience. I mean,
and seeing the meetings with the personal experience of
well, yeah, I mean, that's part of it. I've heard so many talks. I mean, there are times when I don't actually hear the talk itself because there's some fire going on and I'm trying to fix something that's gone, something's come off the rails for the meeting or whatever. But we do try to listen to the videos of the talks that we missed, or Pam and myself both do. So yeah, we've been exposed to so much evidence. That's what it is. I mean, it's not about randomized control trials. I mean, that's the gold standard, but a lot of times it's not even possible to do it properly because of the nature of nutritional research. It's just so hard to tie people to, how do you make sure that people eat exactly what they said they ate or what you asked them to eat? It's just really, really hard. And, I mean, yes, you can see the reversal of type 2 diabetes, for instance, like really quickly. But there's other things like, how do you show that it's better for cardiovascular diseases, like 30, 40 years down the road, that you're going to go back and look at these people, assume they've still been doing the same thing for 40 years. And then say, okay, the cardiac outcomes are better.
Well, fortunately, we don't have to wait that long. Just this week, the long-awaited study with Dr. Budoff and Dave Feldman is come on during the yearly CT angiograms, which is the coronary artery angiograms. And my take from it is that it's while it's variable and not totally protective, if you're in ketosis for a year, not much changes, and some people it didn't change at all.
Right.
So that flies in the face of, and not only in the atherosclerotic disease process, the relationship between LDL and ApoB and the disease process change was non-existent.
Right.
So it's not only protecting our tribe, if you will. Someone comes in, my doctor says I have an LDL of 300, and they fell out of their chair and they said I'm going to die tomorrow. No, hang on, time out.
Yeah. Now there's something who says they're not.
This and so science, data, evidence.
Well, that's what I kind of got a bit off the track there, but it's like the case to me, what's more and more powerful is the clinical data of people like you and Rob. There's like hundreds and hundreds of doctors that I've worked with that now that all have this data, right? And we have doctors that are maybe not as high profile as you guys are, but they're also having their clinical successes. And so we just launched the Journal of Metabolic Health just not even a year ago now. And a lot of the stuff that's starting to be submitted and or at least collated, ready to be submitted, is this clinical data. And I think the more and more of this stuff that is published and accessible for people to search on and find, that I believe is going to become more powerful than a lot of the, also makes up for the lack of the ability to do a randomized control trial in some cases, and prove where there have been controlled trials. Now there's clinical data that shows that was true, right? And
So as Gary, looping back to one of the first people you met and revered, and I do too, Gary Taubes, he says in his first book, Good Calories, Bad Calories, if you're studying something and it gets weaker and weaker, and if you're studying something that gets stronger and stronger, that's what's happening in the low carb keto world. This is an area you want to keep going. Well, so then how did you think about having then a group, a society to bring people together, the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners? Tell me about how that.
Yeah, so it kind of 2018, Gary actually suggested that we have another session where we got feedback from doctors about with their experiences in trying to do this in their practice. And he got Adele Height. He introduced me to Adele Height, Dr. Adele Height, to help mediate that. And she was so excited about this and sent to me the whole stuff about standard of care. And like what came out of that session was that we needed to develop a set of clinical guidelines. And so we did that. And she's just unfortunately passed a year or two ago, but did such an astounding job at producing these guidelines.
Yeah, tour de force.
She was just absolutely did the work of 10 people, and on top of at the time when she did this, she was actually defending her PhD, all at the same time. It was incredible.
So she had worked with me at the Duke Clinic.
All right, yeah, that's I remember.
And got the kind of just said, hey, I'll come in and teach. And I let her teach for several years. And so she saw firsthand what could happen.
Yeah.
And you changed the food.
So she was totally committed to it, but so we published it on the Low Carb USA website. And it got a lot of traction there, but that was the organization that I was running, and that was the website that we had. And I had tried to create this concept of professional membership within Low Carb USA, with the idea that, like, one of the things she talks about with standard of care is that it's about the consensus amongst practitioners with similar training and in a similar environment. What they agree is the way to go in any particular type of condition or whatever that they're trying to treat. And sure, now I forgot where we were going with this.
Well, why a society of people? Why
right, yeah. So
conference to a society.
Right. So we kind of knew that it had hardly any traction. Like I don't know, got 20 people just to sign up for it or something. So, but we knew something like this was important, and it was needed. And then Tro started talking about it at a Florida event back in 2020 before COVID. And
real agent. Dr. Torklage
Yeah, Trochalazian. He's part of the Low Carb MD
podcast,
right? And so he was talking to Pam. Apparently, I didn't even know this happened until after the event. But he was saying, like, we need an organization to represent us practitioners, like these other professional organizations out there, But we want to have the people that recognize dietary, nutritional, and lifestyle treatments for metabolic conditions, right? And so he started writing on Twitter about it, like after we got back from the meeting. And I wrote to him and said, like, I'm trying to do this on Low Carb USA already. Like, we need to talk. And so we went backwards and forwards and eventually realized that what we needed was a proper non-profit professional organization to represent everybody. And so he apparently had been telling Pam at the meeting, like, I think Doug should do this. So yeah, I mean, it became, Pam says, it became like my COVID baby, right? Because COVID kind of just hit around that time. Everything shut down. And so through the rest of that year, I basically learned how to create a nonprofit, which was quite tough because it was COVID, right? So all the government employees were at home. And I've said this a couple of times, like, as much as the government's normally pretty difficult to work with, considering the situation, I was amazed at how helpful they were and how it actually kept progressing in spite of that. And they were all working at home and everything as well. And yeah, by the end of the year, the nonprofit was in place. We created the website, a board of directors of which you are one of them. And it was actually you that came up with the name, the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners. And we wanted to, you wanted to not pigeonhole ourselves into one particular
approach.
Right. That's the right word, right?
Yeah.
So
I would have to just say, publicly again, that if a vegan diet were the best healthy diet, I would say we should be teaching it.
We should be doing it.
Science needs to be the driver, not a particular cult or one avenue.
Right.
And if there are a lot of ways that work, kind of like doctors with pills, and you don't just say, oh yeah, there's one blood pressure pill, another one doesn't work. So that broadening it beyond low carb, but then also including non-physicians, to me was so important, because having worked with doctors, pretty much they prescribe pills, even in or shots in the weight loss world. And if we're going to really make a dent, we need coaches and nutritionists and even people like Adele Height. She had no medical background, and yet with her personal experience, she was one of the best coaches and advisors. I saw that firsthand. And then, so as I was trying to get doctors involved, they're they're overtrained.
Right.
Although their knowledge about medication and medication reduction, deprescribing is invaluable and needed at times, this is really a grassroots kind of change. And like, if there was a hurricane and disaster, you don't get the most highly trained people to come fix the disaster. You teach people what they need to know, like relief workers. And SMHP to me is a place where non-physicians and even non-medically trained people can have a huge impact to learn these techniques. And I think the society is incredibly important as a place to be and to grow. And I know Dr. Trochalazian also very well. He's on the board, and another dynamo and tour de force. And we've had several come through. I have to mention Sarah Hallberg as well, who sadly passed away. But I guess we're coming to the end of the time. I wonder, with your perspective now, of course, the book is amazing. Thank you for putting that together. The data that you've seen and the evidence that you've seen comes into the field, what we call clinical epidemiology, where you're seeing firsthand what's happening. It's not the be all end all, but it's the start for so many things.
Right.
And what do you see happening from here going forward?
Oh, that's, look, when we first started doing this 10 years ago, keto was a bad word, Now it's ketogenic or whatever is one of the most, was for a while at least, one of the most searched items on Google. So much more has happened in those 10 years that more and more people know about the ketogenic diet or something, but the misinformation, unfortunately, out there is equally as bad. And so people hear about it, but they hear a lot of rubbish about it. And so,
if there were a company to support this, you'd tell them, you'd send them a lawyer letter and say, you can't say that. That's libelous. It's false information. But because there's no one to. Well, that's partly why I do my YouTube channel, to debunk.
to debunk this stuff. But if it needs, then there's so much out there. You can't debunk everything. You choose your battles, right? And there's a lot of people that do that as well, and they all contribute towards that. And it's that's what I feel like. In the beginning, we were trying to convince people that it was a thing. Now a lot more people are starting to realize that, but their understanding of what that thing is not ideal. So our mission has kind of shifted from trying to convince people to trying to educate people. And I think that's where we talked a lot. Remember, we had that day a couple of years ago on type 1. And it was so important to for those people to get that message out. And for so many years, they've been ignored by the medical community, that they've become combative. And so they very derogatory and very confrontational with the medical community, because they've feel like they defending themselves all of the time.
And that was incredible. So the society meeting has pre-courses, or brings together topics, and one of them was bringing together parents of people with type 1 diabetes. And so the informal gathering of the McCardle folks kind of led to this, but the formal bringing together a group on sugar addiction, on food addiction, and the type 1 diabetes, women's health, and mental health. I see the meeting to be able to bring together a formal process then of writing up guidelines and
Right.
The medical backlash against the parents of type 1, I did not understand that at all.
I had no idea.
The doctors are saying, I'm sorry, your son is too well controlled. You're harming your son by having them have normal blood sugar. This was that was really shocking. But even within the medical world, I'm not a pediatrician, but I couldn't believe there was so much antagonism from the diabetologists of children, seeing normal blood sugars in these children because they weren't eating carbs. These, I guess, it's called cognitive dissonance, where you want your patient to be better, but you don't want them to do it in a way that, well, is it harming them really? No, it's not.
Yeah.
That happens, I'm afraid, at all levels of the medical process. Well, let's go back to how you started, which was you just tried it for a week. and that may be all you need to do if you're just starting. But getting the right information is
right. So I think that's where it's going. Is where we got to do more and more work on. And I think that's where I see the SMHP going is just like the go-to organization, right? If you want to go and find out about this and learn about it. Like, you know, like some trusted organization for some, whatever subject it is or whatever. Like there's the gold standard, right? I want SMHP to be like the gold standard. If you want to go and learn the truth about this stuff, then you go to that website and you look at that training and you look at the information that's on that site, and that's what you can take to the bank, right? And that's what I'm hope. That's my hope for this.
Well, I hope we can continue to collaborate well and grow. It's using again, I don't like the battle metaphors either, but there are times when I think we're trying to mount a fortress and you know, or get a beachhead on the soil. I think we've gone from, you know, us going onto the beach, and now we have at least kind of a fortress, the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners, or at least a place now that's solidified on the world of even the medical world, the legitimate medical issues that we fix with nutrition being key, not pharmaceuticals. Again, how do people find you, your work, and show me your book one last time?
Okay, yeah. So it's the SMHP .org or the SMHP. If you just search for the SMHP, you're going to find all of it. Low Carb USA, one word. Those two things you search for everything. And then, yeah, the book is The Road to Metabolic Health. And it's on, at the moment anyway, it's only available on Amazon in Kindle or hard or soft cover. And yeah, I mean, the story goes all the way back to when my grandfather was commissioner of police in Sarawak in Borneo. And he had something to do with bringing an end to the tradition of headhunting there. And I said, it's like, I don't know what this got to do with anything other, but it's a cool story, you know.
Well, you know, thank you for taking the time. I like showing newcomers and even old comers to the field that engineers, non-medical people glom onto this because it works
And it makes sense.
and it makes sense. And of all people, engineers, it seems to me, whether it be society or software or industrial engineer, they seem to, you know, want results now. You know, don't give me some hope and dream. You know, smoke and mirrors even. So again, you've been so influential to me and the field. Thank you.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, and check out adaptyourlifeacademy.com.